I sat in that courtroom feeling like the walls were closing in. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The wooden bench was cold beneath me, and I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the lawyer's voice droning on about custody arrangements and asset division. This was it. The day I'd lose everything. My marriage was already gone. That ship had sailed the moment I caught T-Main with her. But now he was taking my daughter too. And somehow, impossibly, he was winning. The air smelled like old paper and floor polish. T-Main sat across the aisle with his lawyer, that expensive suit guy with the shark smile. Next to them was Dr. Linda Morrison, the psychologist he'd hired to testify against me. She'd written a whole report about how I was unstable, neglectful, emotionally unfit. I'd never even met her before last month. But there she sat, looking professional and trustworthy in her navy blazer, holding a folder thick with lies. I had no money left for a good attorney. Mine was a public defender who looked about 12 years old and kept forgetting my name. Meanwhile, T-Main had drained our accounts, taken the house, and built this perfect narrative where I was the villain and he was the concerned father, just trying to protect our child. And the worst part? I could see the judge starting to believe it. If this story makes you wonder what happens when the system fails the innocent, stay with me. This channel is new, and we're bringing you real stories like this every single day. Stories that remind us why we should never give up. Hit subscribe, because some truths need to be heard. 3 months earlier, I'd still believed in fairness. I'd believed that truth mattered, that courts existed to protect people like me. I was so naive it hurts to remember. T-Main and I had been married 8 years. We had Zariah when I was 25, and she became my whole world. This tiny person with his eyes and my stubborn chin. For a while, we were happy. Or I thought we were. T-Main worked in sales, traveled a lot. I worked part-time at a medical office and took care of everything at home. Standard stuff. Normal life. Then came the distance. The late nights. The phone calls he'd take in the other room. I'm not stupid. I knew something was wrong. But when I asked, he'd flip it on me. Say I was paranoid, jealous, suffocating him. He had this way of making me doubt my own eyes. The day I found the messages on his iPad, he didn't even try to deny it. He just looked at me with this cold expression I'd never seen before and said, "I want a divorce." Within a week, he'd moved out. Within 2 weeks, I couldn't access our bank accounts. Within a month, he'd filed for full custody of Zariah and painted me as an unfit mother in legal documents I could barely afford to respond to. That's when Dr. Morrison entered the picture, his star witness. She'd done a comprehensive evaluation based on, and I'm not kidding, 2 conversations with T-Main and 0 with me. Her report said I had borderline personality disorder, that I was manipulative and violent, that Zariah was afraid of me. None of it was true. But it was in writing, signed by someone with credentials. My daughter was 7 years old. She asked me every night when Daddy was coming home, why we had to move to a smaller apartment, why I cried in the bathroom when I thought she couldn't hear. I had no answers that wouldn't break her heart even more. The preliminary hearing had gone badly. The judge, this older man with gray hair and reading glasses, had listened to Dr. Morrison's testimony with this grave, concerned expression. He'd looked at me like I was already guilty. T-Main's lawyer had hammered every point: the unstable home environment, my emotional outbursts, my inability to co-parent effectively. My lawyer had objected twice. Both times he sounded uncertain. I'd gone home that night and sat in Zariah's room after she fell asleep, watching her breathe, wondering how many more nights I'd get to do this. The nightlight cast shadows shaped like stars across her ceiling. She'd drawn a picture that day in school, our family, all 3 of us holding hands. She'd given it to me at dinner and said, "I made this before, when we were happy." That's when I knew I was going to lose her. The final hearing arrived like an execution date. I'd barely slept in weeks. My sister had offered to come with me, but I'd told her no. I couldn't stand the thought of her watching me lose. So I sat alone on my side of the courtroom, while T-Main's side filled up with his parents, his brother, even some co-workers there to testify about what a devoted father he was. The judge called the session to order. My lawyer shuffled his papers. T-Main's lawyer stood up with this confident smile and started his closing argument. He talked about stability, about T-Main's steady income and large home, about how I'd abandoned our marital residence. Never mind that T-Main had changed the locks. About Dr. Morrison's expert opinion that Zariah needed to be removed from my care immediately. I watched the judge's face. He was nodding along. Dr. Morrison took the stand again to reinforce her conclusions. She spoke in this calm, clinical voice about attachment disorders and environmental stressors. She said she was concerned for Zariah's well-being. She recommended supervised visitation for me at most. My lawyer asked her a few weak questions about her methodology. She answered smoothly, like she'd rehearsed. Probably had. Then T-Main testified. He talked about how much he loved Zariah, how worried he was about her, how he just wanted what was best for his daughter. He even teared up a little. The performance was flawless. When it was my turn to speak, my voice came out small and shaky. I tried to explain what had really happened. The infidelity, the financial abuse, the way he'd systematically isolated me and destroyed my credibility. But without proof, without money for investigators or expert witnesses, I just sounded desperate. The judge asked me a few questions. His tone was patient but skeptical, like he was humoring me. Then he said the words I'd been dreading. "I'm prepared to issue my ruling." The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. My lawyer put his hand on my shoulder. Meant to be comforting, I guess, but it just felt like pity. The judge cleared his throat and began, "Having reviewed all testimony and evidence presented." The courtroom door opened. Everyone turned. A bailiff stepped in, looking confused, and behind her was Zariah. My daughter stood in the doorway in her purple dress, the one with the flowers she'd insisted on wearing that morning. She was supposed to be at school. My sister was supposed to pick her up after. But there she was, small and scared and holding something in her hands. "Zariah?" I half stood, my heart lurching. "Baby, what are you—" "Your Honor." Zariah's voice was tiny but clear. "I need to show you something. Something Mommy doesn't know about." The judge frowned. T-Main's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up a hand. "Young lady, this is highly irregular. How did you—" "Please," Zariah said, and her eyes were full of tears. "It's important. It's about my daddy." The room went dead silent. I looked at T-Main. For the first time all day, he didn't look confident. He looked pale. "What do you have there?" the judge asked gently. Zariah held up an old tablet, the one that had been hers, the one with the cracked screen that barely worked anymore. "A video," she said. I didn't mean to record it, but I did. My mind raced. What video? When? The bailiff took the tablet from Zariah and brought it to the judge. He looked at it, then at the lawyers, then at Zariah. "When was this recorded?" 2 weeks ago, Zariah said. She was crying now, silent tears running down her cheeks. "I was playing games on my old tablet at Daddy's house. I left it on the couch, but it was recording. I didn't know until I found it yesterday." The judge plugged the tablet into the courtroom's display system. "I'm going to view this. If it's relevant to these proceedings, we'll proceed accordingly." He pressed play. The video was shaky, filmed from a couch cushion at an angle that showed part of T-Main's living room. The audio was muffled but clear enough. At first, it was just empty room, the sound of voices in another part of the house. Then T-Main walked into frame. He wasn't alone. Dr. Linda Morrison was with him, not in her professional blazer, in casual clothes, laughing at something he'd said. They sat down on the couch, close together. Too close. My stomach dropped. "So the hearing's in 2 weeks," T-Main was saying on the video. "You sure your report's airtight?" "Relax," Dr. Morrison's voice, smooth and amused. "I've done this before. The judge will eat it up. Borderline personality disorder, emotional instability, the whole package. She doesn't have the money to fight it. And there's no way it comes back on you? How could it? I'm a licensed psychologist giving my expert opinion. The fact that we're together is irrelevant. No one knows, and no one will." T-Main laughed, but it was an ugly sound. "God, she's so stupid. She actually thinks she has a chance." "Most of them do," Dr. Morrison said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "It's almost sad. But hey, that's how you and I met, remember? Your buddy needed someone to testify against his ex. I helped him out, you helped me out, and here we are." On screen, T-Main kissed her. My hands clenched on the table in front of me. In the courtroom, someone gasped, but the video wasn't over. T-Main pulled back from the kiss and said, "What about the money? You got your cut from the accounts?" "Half of what you transferred, like we agreed," Dr. Morrison said. 40,000. Not bad for a few hours of paperwork. Worth it to get rid of her, Tmain said. And once I have full custody, I can sell the house, take Zariah's college fund. Hell, I can do whatever I want. She won't be able to stop me. What about Zariah, though? Dr. Morrison asked. You actually planning to keep her? Tmain shrugged. On camera, he actually shrugged. For a while, until it's inconvenient. Then maybe boarding school or something. I don't know. I didn't have a kid to be a dad. I had a kid because that's what you do. But she's useful now for making Nala look bad. My daughter's voice came from somewhere off camera in the video, small and distant. Daddy? Both of them froze on screen. Shit, Tmain muttered. I thought she was asleep. Want me to check? Dr. Morrison asked. No, just, let's go to the bedroom. She won't come in there. They got up and left the frame. The video continued for another minute of empty room before it cut off. The courtroom was dead silent when the video ended. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I looked at Zariah, who was standing next to the bailiff, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know what it meant at first, Zariah said, her voice breaking. But then I heard them say Mommy's name, and I knew. I knew Daddy was being bad. So I kept the tablet hidden and I brought it today because I don't want Mommy to go away. I want to stay with Mommy. The judge's face had gone from neutral to stone. He looked at Tmain. Counselor, I need to speak with your client. Now. Tmain's lawyer was stammering, trying to form words. Tmain himself had gone from pale to gray. Dr. Morrison was already standing, gathering her things, trying to leave. Dr. Morrison, the judge's voice cracked like a whip. Sit down. Bailiff, no one leaves this courtroom. Everything that happened next felt like a fever dream. The judge called a recess and had the video authenticated by the court's tech staff. It was real. Metadata confirmed it was filmed 2 weeks ago on Zariah's tablet, unedited. The judge then called both lawyers into chambers. They were gone for 20 minutes. When they returned, Tmain's lawyer looked like he'd seen a ghost. My lawyer, young, inexperienced, out of his depth, looked shocked. The judge returned to the bench and said, This court is reconvening. Based on new evidence presented today, I am immediately granting temporary full custody to Mrs. Nala. Furthermore, I am ordering an investigation into Dr. Linda Morrison's professional conduct and credentials, and I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and perjury. Tmain shot to his feet. Your Honor, that video, it's out of context. Mr. Tmain, the judge said, his voice ice. You will sit down and you will be silent, or I will hold you in contempt. You have confessed on tape to conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of marital assets, and falsifying evidence in a custody proceeding. You also made statements suggesting you obtained custody under false pretenses with no genuine intention to care for your child. The district attorney will determine what charges to file. In the meantime, I am also granting a restraining order. You are not to contact Mrs. Nala or your daughter except through supervised legal channels. Dr. N. Morrison tried one more time to leave. The bailiff stopped her at the door. She started talking fast, trying to explain, but the judge cut her off. Dr. Morrison, you have committed perjury in my courtroom, and by your own admission on tape, have engaged in a pattern of falsifying expert testimony for financial gain. You will surrender your credentials to the State Licensing Board, and you will remain available for questioning by law enforcement. Bailiff, please escort her out and notify courthouse security she's not to leave the building. It happened so fast. Tmain was shouting. His lawyer was trying to calm him down. Dr. Morrison was being led out in tears, her professional life crumbling in real time. My lawyer was shaking my hand, saying something I couldn't quite hear over the ringing in my ears. And Zariah ran to me. I caught her and held her so tight I was afraid I'd break her. She was sobbing into my shoulder, saying, I'm sorry, Mommy, I'm sorry, over and over. Baby, I managed to choke out. You have nothing to be sorry for. You saved us. You saved me. She pulled back to look at me, her face red and wet. I was so scared. I thought if I showed the video, Daddy would be mad at me, but I couldn't let him take you away. You were so brave, I said, and I meant it with every atom of my being. You were so brave. The judge called us back to attention one more time. He looked at Zariah with something like wonder. Young lady, he said gently, what you did today took tremendous courage. You told the truth even when it was hard. That's what we hope for in this courtroom. And you've reminded us all why it matters." Zariah nodded, still crying, still holding on to me like I might disappear. The judge issued his final orders: full custody to me pending a more thorough hearing, which he said was now a formality. Timaine was to have no contact with Zariah until a psychological evaluation and supervised visitation plan could be established, if ever. All marital assets were frozen pending a complete forensic audit, and just like that, it was over. Timaine was escorted out by security, still protesting. His lawyer quietly told mine he'd be in touch about an expedited settlement. Dr. Morrison was taken to a separate office to speak with investigators. I walked out of that courthouse holding my daughter's hand, the afternoon sun bright and warm on my face. My lawyer had stayed behind to file paperwork. My sister was waiting outside. Zariah had called her that morning and asked her to drive her to the courthouse. She said it was an emergency, my sister told me, tears in her own eyes. She said you needed her. I did, I said, looking down at Zariah. I really did. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, but this time I wasn't alone or powerless. The video had changed everything. Timaine's assets were unfrozen and divided. I got my fair share, and then some as restitution. Dr. Morrison's license was suspended pending a full investigation, which uncovered 2 other cases where she'd falsified testimony. Criminal charges were filed against both her and Timaine. But more than the legal victories, more than the money or the house or any of that, what mattered was Zariah. She'd been so scared that day, scared of her father's anger, scared of losing me, scared of what telling the truth might cost her. But she'd done it anyway. A 7-year-old child had stood up in a courtroom and said, "This is wrong, and I'm going to stop it." I asked her later, after things had calmed down, why she'd kept the video secret even from me. We were sitting in our apartment, the small one I'd rented after Timaine kicked me out, the one that suddenly felt like a palace because it was ours and no one could take it away. "I was afraid you'd make me delete it," she said quietly, "or that you'd try to use it and Daddy would find out and get mad. I thought if I just showed it to the judge, everyone would see, and no one could stop it." She'd been right. In her 7-year-old wisdom, she'd understood something I hadn't, that sometimes the truth is most powerful when it's undeniable, when it comes from the most innocent source at the moment it's needed most. "You know what you taught me?" I asked her, brushing her hair back from her face. She looked up at me with those serious eyes, Timaine's eyes, but filled with something he'd never had. Compassion. What? That being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. She thought about that, then nodded. "Are you still scared, Mommy?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not like before. Because now I know that even when things seem hopeless, even when it feels like the whole world is against you, the truth can still win, especially when good people decide to fight for it." She hugged me then, tight and fierce. "I'll always fight for you," she said, "and I'll always fight for you," I promised. The legal stuff took months to fully resolve. Timaine pleaded guilty to fraud and conspiracy charges and got a suspended sentence plus probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. Dr. Morrison lost her license permanently and faced criminal charges in multiple jurisdictions. Timaine's lawyer, the shark in the expensive suit, was also investigated for his role in the scheme, though nothing criminal was ultimately filed against him. He did, however, lose several clients, and his reputation took a hit that ended his career at that firm. As for custody, the final order gave me full legal and physical custody of Zariah. Timaine was granted supervised visitation once a month, but he never showed up. Not once. After 6 months, his parental rights were terminated at his own request. He moved out of state, and I haven't heard from him since. It hurt Zariah for a while. That abandonment, that confirmation that he'd never really wanted to be her father. We went to therapy together, and slowly, she healed. She came to understand that his failures weren't about her, that she was loved, desperately and completely, by me and by everyone else who mattered in our lives. The last time we talked about it, she said something that broke my heart and put it back together at the same time. "I think I'm glad he's gone, because now I know what real love is, and it's not him." I framed that drawing she'd made, the one of our family holding hands. I put it in my office at the new house we bought with the settlement money. It reminds me every day of what we had, what we lost, and what we fought to keep. but I also framed something else, a photo from that day in court. My sister had taken it on her phone right after we walked out. It shows me and Zariah on the courthouse steps, both of us crying, both of us smiling, holding on to each other like we'd never let go. Because we won't. Whatever comes next. And I know there will be hard days ahead, because life is full of them. We'll face it together. A mother and daughter who learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to stand up and speak truth, even when your voice shakes, especially then. If this story shook something loose in you, if it reminded you that the truth can still matter even when everything feels rigged against it, then maybe share it with someone who needs to hear that today. Maybe it's someone going through their own custody battle, or someone facing down a system that seems determined to crush them, or maybe just someone who's forgotten that good people still exist in this world. We're all Zariah sometimes. Small, scared, holding evidence of truth that feels too dangerous to share. But we're also all capable of walking into that courtroom, of saying, this is wrong, of refusing to let injustice win, just because it's easier to stay silent. This channel exists because stories like this need to be told, because somewhere out there, someone is sitting in their own courtroom, literal or metaphorical, thinking they've already lost. And maybe, just maybe, they need to hear about a 7-year-old girl who refused to let that be the end of the story. So subscribe. Share these stories. Let them remind you that kindness and courage still exist, that truth still has power, that even in our darkest moments, hope isn't just wishful thinking. It's a choice we make every single day to keep fighting for what's right. Some stories deserve to be heard. This is one of them.